tell us what it's like for you to have built a sales organization that you now have more work booked nationally than you've ever had in the history of Dr. Asphalt.
Yeah, well, obviously that's a great feeling. There's not that many nights anymore where I have to be up that late because I have a great team of sales and operations and admin that all work together to get that done. Just having a sales team, or even just when we had one salesman where it wasn't just me anymore, we were able to grow the business much faster because we had people in different specialties in different parts of the business. So those times were definitely tough, but it was what I needed to get done and get to the next level. So I'm very thankful and grateful that I was able to do that, and yeah, it's gotten us to where we are now.
What is going on, everyone? Judd Burdon here with Asphalt Kingdom, and today I am so freaking stoked about what we're about to talk about right now, because in life things are not always cupcakes and butterflies. We are certainly dealing with business every day, and that can be like sometimes trying to put the rails back together before your locomotive hits the rails to continue on its path of momentum. It's like firefighting along the way. And so today, fortunately, we have the opportunity to connect with Jake Abernathy again for another freestyle jam. This is like going on 4 years, man. I appreciate you very much and taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know how busy you are, and I know that on behalf of the whole audience, they're super thankful for the time as well, man. Welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Got to be about the fourth or fifth one we've done now, so lots changed over the years.
Fantastic. Cool. Let's unpack the different portions of what we're speaking about here. As we were just in the kind of waiting room, we were speaking about balls in the street, and that actually came from a book that I read that changed the trajectory of our business that I recommend every person reads. It's called A Road Less Stupid, written by Keith Cunningham. And he speaks about balls in the street, man. Like, here's the thing, right? We can talk about success. We can talk about building $1 million businesses. We can talk about what it's like to have the freedom attached to revenue. But the reality of it is, revenue is vanity, cash is sanity. And so if you can take us back, man, to when you first started out, I remember your fist pumping in the truck. That story's up on one of the freestyle jams that we did together. Having some really great growth years, reinvesting into your business, but then also dealing with perhaps some things that we can help the audience understand that they might be up against. So let's start to unpack all of this, man. Why don't you take us back kind of to the highlights and then talk about some of the challenges you've had?
Yeah, so there was that story about the first year when we first bought our truck, and then we're driving back and got our first sale on the way back from buying our first truck. And then the first, I don't know, 7 years, we grew over 100% every single year, which was awesome. But we started to get in that mindset where nothing mattered to us but revenue. And then that started to bite us in the ass as far as cash flow. So like you said, cash is king. We were just worried about revenue and buying the new truck and just worrying about revenue. And then started to realize, especially over the winters, that things were getting tight. And so there was a lot of, I mean, we're still kind of going through it now. We're still trying to grow fast, but we've started to take it, look at it from a different lens, as far as we still need to make sure we have money to continue doing this. So there were a lot of hard years there where we didn't know if we would make it through the winter. We had to find ways to either do stuff in the winter or sell a truck here and there. And that forced us to really start and look at efficiencies and what are we spending versus what do we need, what do we absolutely want versus a need, and all that stuff. So we're starting to turn it more towards, yeah, revenue is important, but at the end of the day, the bottom line and how much we're actually profiting is really what's important. And so we're still kind of going through that transition now after I think 9 seasons now. Revenue's way up, and we're trying to get profit to follow along. So
like, you built $1 million business pretty quickly, man. Like, by what year did you build a 7-figure company? Do you know what year that was?
I believe season 3 or 4 was when
Yeah.
we got to $1 million.
Yeah. And then you built to multiple millions in revenue by season 5.
It's yeah. So every year we doubled except for last year. So we're getting to be way higher in revenue, which is harder and harder to double every time you double again. But Yeah, season 5 or 6 was multiples.
So as you're hitting these revenue numbers, it requires more upfront capital, cash, and or the ability to leverage capital or assets that you have to be able to go into these bigger projects, right? So,
Yeah.
you're not doing $5,000 jobs anymore. You're doing six-figure jobs in many cases. And so can you
Yep.
help us understand, like, as you got to that turning point in your growth of your business, understanding that you needed more cash to be able to actually go do those larger projects, and that can sometimes put your business at risk too, right? Because you don't have the cash to pay staff and so on potentially, and you now have to hold them over. So can you tell us a little bit about that pain that potentially you can help some other people understand what that's like and maybe how to deal with those situations at hand?
Yeah. So yeah, especially when you start working with big box retailers or, factories or big companies, it's usually net 60. Net 30 is good, net 60, but even when they say they're going to pay in 30 days, it's usually 40, 45. So you have all this time with labor, materials and those costs out the door, and you're waiting for the money to come in. So that is still a huge struggle for ours. And one of the things that we have implemented is, a down payment. We try to get 30% down payment from our clients, to cover those expenses while we wait for the job to get done and then the money to come in. But we're not super strict on that. We don't want to, scare clients away. So we ask for that, and if they'll do it, that's great. We've been able to kind of close that gap there. Also, we got to get really strategic with the scheduling. If we have a bunch of these jobs that aren't going to pay for 60 days but cost a lot in labor and materials, we'll try and space those out, and in between we'll do some, even driveways or smaller commercial jobs that will, take a couple hours to do, and we can invoice them and get paid immediately. If there's clients that will pay right away, sprinkle those in between, so you're gonna get that money and be able to cover your expenses until the bigger checks come in. So we've done that. We've also used equipment and other ways to collateralize lines of credit to cover us in the times when especially in the beginning of the season, is really when that comes into play. Having a line of credit can be, a savior during those times.
So there's a few things that are going on there. So one is that you can essentially take a deposit from a client. If you can, go for that for sure. You always want to try to do that right up front. And if they say no, then you've
Correct.
got an important decision. But if they do, you've got some cogs and operational costs that have been covered.
Yep.
The second thing is fill your calendar with cash paying jobs that are fillers in between, where you're not needing to deal with 30 days and add on payments, et cetera. So that provides you with some operational cash to be able to work with during that time.
Yep.
And then you also want to make sure that you are building phenomenal relationships with financial institutions, where you're able to collateralize some of the assets internally, and also on supply. I'm sure that that's a really important thing, is to build massively good relationships and nurture those relationships around the supply side of the business as well. Because I know, like, we've got clients that end up wanting to go do a large crack sealing job that requires, let's say, a truckload of crack sealer. And what we'll do is work with our client to make sure that they have the crack sealer needed, but based upon the terms that they've signed into with their client. And what we do is we connect the dots there to facilitate the supply connection that they can leverage, because we essentially have our terms with our vendors and manufacturers that we work with as well. So we're able to facilitate connections. So would those be kind of the golden pieces you would recommend people explore?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I would add good relationships with your vendors as well. So if they understand you need the full load of crack fill to do the job, but you're not going to get paid for X amount of days, a lot of times they'll work with you on that. Whereas if it's somebody, a vendor you don't have a good relationship, they'll want you to pay in 30 days, and there's no question about it. And then that can put you in a difficult spot. So good relationships with your vendors is also, I'd add that to the fourth one.
It's interesting, in today's market, certainly being a vendor for many contractors out there in the industry and supplying equipment, supplies, and so on, there are, 95% of the clients that we work with are super appreciative of the relationship, and they nurture it. And we are a team together. We achieve more together in that partnership. It really is a partnership. And so what we see, though, is there's a percentage of contractors out there that are running pavement asset management businesses that actually are trying to bully vendors by the way that they communicate, almost as though the vendor, manufacturer of the products, vendor, distributor, is like the opposing party or the enemy, and they try to aggressively push, and that tarnishes relationships. And so I think it's a massively important thing that you just said right there is the vendors that you work with should become your partners, and you should really nurture those relationships, stay in touch with them, shake hands, go have lunch with them, meet them. But like, that's so important, Jake. I'm glad you brought that up, man.
Absolutely.
Cool. Now, let me ask you, so, you're going into ninth season. You're in ninth season already. You're already out jamming, doing work. You got a calendar that's stacked, I'm sure, already.
Yeah, and what's funny right now is we actually have more work sold in other states than Minnesota and Wisconsin, our home states. So that's interesting. Over the past 2 years, that part of our business is really growing. So yeah, we're busy.
National accounts then is what you've been able to secure, a lot of those national accounts that allow your crews and your assets to be essentially booked on that calendar.
Yep.
I say this often, man, like a lot of people don't understand that as their equipment, whether it's a seal coat rig or whether it's a hot box or trailer or infrared units, as they sit there in your shop, they actually cost you money when they're idle.
Yeah, they sure do.
Can you tell us what that's like, man? During those times where you may have not had enough work sold during that period to keep your assets performing, like what's the answer? What is the solution to getting your assets moving and performing for you? What is the solution?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not a good feeling when you say have a busy season and then the start of the next one is not so good yet, but then you have all, different equipment and trucks sitting there, and they do cost money just sitting there. So really the answer to that is sales. Sales solves that problem. If it's you or you have a sales team, get on the phone, email. A really simple thing we do is we build lists of people we want to work with or companies, and just a simple email to them like, hey, are you the right person to speak to about asphalt projects in 2025? I can't tell you how many times that's worked for me. Something simple versus, some people want to send this long email or this super long script on a phone call, whereas what we've found works best is just, hey, are you the right person to speak to about this? You start talking about what their needs are, but I guess the answer there is sales. Get on the phone, start prospecting. Don't just wait for someone to fill out a form. You got to go out and get it and get those assets moving again.
I think that is another crucially important piece. Right now, Google My Business is cracking down on all kinds of listings and banning and suspending listings because people have tried to overstep into other areas that they actually don't really have a place of business, but they're trying to essentially be the lead generation source. You've seen it with, driving services. You've seen it with private jet services. You've seen it in the asphalt industry. You've seen it in the concrete, pressure washing, landscaping, roofing, you name it. And so you get these national accounts that essentially, or national service providers that are trying to essentially go in through a black hat SEO way to generate all the leads from those local areas. Have you seen that happening lately?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a tough one, man, for sure. And so, when we think of sales, if we're relying on Google or our website or social media from a marketing standpoint, where the face of our business is kind of trying to do that lead generation to drive your pipeline, if you're sitting around in idle mode waiting and you've got those key man issues to drive leads, I'm telling you right now, you're building a house of cards with your business. And for all of you listening right now, if you are not building an outbound sales program for your company, you will not grow the same way that you would as if you did. And so the sales program, man. I have watched you, like, even on social, dude. You've been up at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock a.m., 3 o'clock a.m., all nighters, drafting proposals in the middle of the night while people are sleeping.
Oh
And
yeah.
and so tell us what it's like for you to have built a sales organization that you now have more work booked nationally than you've ever had in the history of Dr. Asphalt.
Yeah, well, obviously that's a great feeling. There's not that many nights anymore where I have to be up that late because I have a great team of sales and operations and admin that all work together to get that done. So just having a sales team, or even just when we had one salesman where it wasn't just me anymore, we were able to, you know, grow the business much faster because we had, people in different specialties and different parts of the business. So those times were definitely tough, but it was what I needed to get done and get to the next level. So I'm very thankful and grateful that I was able to do that. Yeah, it's gotten us to where we are now. So
It's a beautiful thing when you're able to create a machine-based business versus a hand crank business, because when you do build the machine-based businesses you have, where you have other people in the seats of the processes and systems that you've developed and that you've learned and implemented, when you do that, you establish more enterprise value and you build a company that actually becomes sellable one day. Whereas if the business relied on you, those long nights, those long mornings, those day in, day out grind that you had to do, literally the business was on your tit.
yeah,
And that is a key man risk. And so you are building a beautiful business that is now machine based. Now I know that profit is sanity, and we say cash is sanity, but like profit for you, there's something, it's called profit first. And I'll send you over some information on it. But profit first is where you essentially are taking. Have you heard of profit first?
I have. Yeah.
That's something that is really interesting. Imagine taking the profit off of every project that was going to be your net profit percentage at the end of the year that you're projecting in your budgets. You take that off every project and you stick it in its profit first account. And so if you want to do 18% profit or 21% profit or whatever that number is on your budget, you literally are taking that to put over in that profit first account. And you cannot touch it. You cannot touch it until you've actually closed your books. That profit, and you can do that every quarter if you want, but that profit rate there, you have no other choice but to fix the business around the profit, which is a beautiful thing. We started implementing that and it is awesome, dude. It
Yeah.
all makes us work hard in the areas that make the most sense. If we think about that tube of toothpaste,
Mm.
when we have all that toothpaste in the tube, man, we're super generous on the toothbrush, but when it comes
Yeah.
down to the last little bit, it's amazing how strategic we get.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we haven't done that, but I have heard of that. Definitely a hard thing to do, I can imagine, and not just pull money out when you need it, but I can see how that would be, very beneficial.
Well, you can imagine that if the let me ask you, is profit important to a company?
Absolutely.
It's the oxygen to the patient.
Yeah.
Without the patient dies. And so if it's the most important thing to the patient to keep the patient alive as profit, then we have to figure out the other things that we need to take care of to make sure that the oxygen is always there. Otherwise, the patient dies. And we dealt with a
Yeah.
circumstance last year, brother, where we literally ran out of oxygen because of the amount of advertising that we were doing. And it burnt out the bottom line in the month of July, in the middle of our season, when we're doing big 7-figure months. And all of a sudden, there's no more oxygen left. And we literally had to go to our team members and say, there's a patient dying on the table, man. We've got to get back to doing this. How are we going to do that? And it's literally by forcing the profit out of every single deal and saying that is non-negotiable. We cannot negotiate the oxygen, otherwise the patient dies.
Yeah.
And if you take the mindset of going that severe, then you become extremely surgical and tactical in the other areas. Otherwise, if you're not super focused on that, and it's just like, oh, I'll just dip in when I want to dip in, you're effed.
Yeah. So I'm guessing you found a lot of stuff you guys really didn't need that you cut.
Brother, the amount of stuff that we went after first, because if we didn't go after that, the patient would have died on the table. Like legitimately, we would have died. After 22 years of being in business, Jake, we were in a spot where there was no more cash, 3 months runway, as every other financial advisor had told us. We were going to burn through that. We caught the advertising burn too late. We'd already burnt 45 days worth of our cash. We're stuck, man. And imagine 22 years of AK being in that position to then changing the mindset of we got to get surgical here, and we cut cost, we increased prices in areas, we did what we needed to do in order to bring back a company that was healthy, and we brought it back fast. Check out Profit First for all of you watching right now. And Jake, I'm telling you, check it out. It is awesome. I'll send you a link actually, and we'll post the link in the comments below as well.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah. So let me ask you, just, I know that you're super busy over there. I've got a couple more questions, and then let's rock and roll and let's go and make some profit. So another question I have for you is this. You've got all kinds of people in our industry right now, whether they're weekend warrior or national service providers. If you were going to give the best advice to our industry, if you were speaking to our industry as a human, what would you be telling the industry right now that we should be doing together to make this industry better?
I want to say stop racing towards the bottom. I don't know how to explain that other than just saying that. There's a lot of, I think as an industry, we got to figure out how to not just be a commodity. Everything seems to be going towards low bid wins, even if it's not a municipality government job. Now, a lot of that comes back to how good are you at sales and providing value. But even still, we're finding that sometimes it's just coming back to who's cheapest, and a lot of times those are the companies that are in and out because they aren't making the profit we were just talking about. So it's just kind of a race to the bottom. And yeah, I don't know if that's a doom and gloom answer for you, but I think that's a problem for the industry.
Brother, I could not agree more. That right there is so important. And I think the only way to solve that problem is by truly doing our very best as leaders in the industry to educate the other guys that are coming into the industry and or are in the industry 1, 2, year 3, some even year 10, is to help them understand that there's an opportunity for us to live really, really great lives if we were to actually just build profitable quotes in the first place. When I hear of these 8 cents a square foot for seal coating for a double coat, it's not possible. Like,
Nope.
You can make money at that level.
Yeah, even when you're cutting corners and doing everything you got to do to try and make money on that, it's just terrible for the industry, terrible for your company. And one of the hardest things is for a company that's not trying to do that is, when we lose all these jobs, it's like they'll ask, can we match that price? And it's a hard thing to say no, because we want to do the work. We're going to keep our guys busy, but the more we say no, we're not going to do it for that price, just because this guy is, the better off everyone will be. And it'll take some time just to let those guys weed themselves out. But it takes all of the good companies to not follow suit and just drop prices because the other guys are.
And the thing is, it's
one thing I will say, sorry, is when you're starting off, I understand, like, usually your prices are cheaper. When we started, we were the cheap guys, 1, because we didn't know about it, and 2, because we didn't have much cost yet. But when you get into like where we are now, I don't see how you can survive with some of the prices we see. So that's, yeah.
And it's really the domino effect too, right? So as owners of the business, we're struggling with profit, but it goes way beyond the owners. It's the guys that are out there in the field that are grinding day in, day out. They're laying crack sealers, seal coating, putting patch down, like legitimately grinding out in the field for the projects that we are selling. And if there's not enough profit in the business, it's hard to be able to bonus those guys to help them actually live a really great life and buy a house and travel when they want to travel and enjoy, raising a family and leaving some legacy behind as well. It's hard to do that if we're all in a race to the bottom. And so, when I think of this, this is such an important piece in this conversation. When you hear people say, what should I be charging per square foot, or what should I be charging per linear foot, or square foot for patching or striping, what do I charge per stall? You can't just come up with an industry standard. You have to truly understand all of your cost basis
Right.
first, understand the margin that you want to be making attached to that to build a healthy company that has the oxygen that allows your team members to be able to thrive financially and to feel the lack of stress that is needed to be felt constantly in our industry. And so, I mean, that's another thing, dude. Like on Facebook, I see people asking, hey, what should I be charging per square foot for seal coat? And there's not a simple answer to that other than understand your costs.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people are still stuck in the unit pricing, which we did that for years and then realized that's not how everybody's costs are different. But at the same time, I know that nobody can make 8 cents a square foot on 100,000 square foot parking lot unless you're doing it yourself over 2 weeks. I just don't know how, you know what I mean? So there's definitely variance as far as this guy's costs versus this guy's costs. So their price per square foot is going to be different, but I'm talking in the, a couple cents different at the higher end, not 8 cents a square foot, if that makes sense.
100%. Jake, just a final question, brother. I really appreciate the time. I know we've been on for 30 minutes so far, but let me ask you, man, like, you run a really beautiful company. You've got, your brand is established. You're known as a leader in the industry. People look up to you. How many members in your company do you have that are operating during the season, like coming up here? How many team members?
It fluctuates quite a bit, as you know, with seasonal and the hard labor, but we're sitting at around 30 right now, between the labor crews, everybody, the pavement maintenance techs, sales, everybody in the company. So around 30 right now.
As a leader, it is so important that you have, of course, time for yourself to be able to nurture yourself, to be able to take care of yourself mentally and physically, emotionally. What
Yeah.
are some things that you do that allow you to kind of regain your balance and get the oxygen back on yourself so that you can stay healthy working on a business like you've built?
I think one of the things I do that keeps me, it kind of resets me every year is 75 hard. So I do that every single year. And you have to focus on yourself when you're doing that or similar, like say it's some other workout program that you're going to stick to. You always feel good after a workout or completing all the tasks in 75 hard. So for me, that's a good thing. Also, just trying to turn it off. I still work 16 hours a day, but it's because I want to. It's not because I have to. I could stop at 5 and everything will be fine. Something, for me, it's health and fitness. So that's what I do to try and stay sane. So for other people, it might be playing a sport or going hunting. I think just doing something that's not business once in a while would be my answer.
Love that, man. Love that. Well, listen, bro, I really appreciate your time. I know everyone has taken away some golden nuggets here for sure. And where can people find you on social media and your website? Is that where people can go and check you out?
Instagram's the spot I'm most active on. So it's just Abernathy Jake on Instagram and then the website. Check the website out. So
You've got an awesome website, bro. Awesome. And service. And you're servicing nationally too, in case there's any facility managers, property owners, property managers that are watching this as well. They can reach out to you. You're national, correct?
Yep.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Cool, brother. Well, listen, I appreciate your time very much. It's been an honor, a privilege to not just be on these jams with you, but to call you a friend and to know that we're on this journey together. But yeah, so it's not all cupcakes, butterflies, and pixie dust, man. But to know that I'm not alone, and for you to know that you're not alone and that we're all here for each other makes it so much more exciting, and we can keep powering forward with strength, man. I appreciate you popping in on this freestyle jam, brother.
Yep. Thanks for having me. Miss ya. Hopefully I'll be in Anguilla next time. So we'll see you soon.
100%. Miss you too, bro. Much love to you, and say hi to the team. Give them a huge high five for me.
Will do. Thanks, man.
All right, bro. Ciao.